Vlad the Impaler, also known as Vlad III or Vlad Dracula, was a 15th century ruler whose name became synonymous with cruelty, fear, and bloodshed. Born in 1431 in Transylvania, his reign over Wallachia was marked by violent campaigns, political intrigue, and an insatiable thirst for vengeance. His horrific acts, including impaling thousands of people, became the stuff of legend. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of his reign was the claim that he forced his enemies to eat human flesh at his own table, a story that blurs the lines between myth and reality and contributes to the terrifying image of Vlad that endures to this day. Vlad Dracula's early life set the stage for his brutal reign. As the son of Vlad II Dracula, a member of the Order of the Dragon, Vlad III was born into a family of warriors and politicians. However, his childhood was marked by political turmoil, betrayal, and the constant threat of death. This environment, coupled with his harsh experiences, played a significant role in shaping his worldview and his approach to leadership. Vlad's father was eventually betrayed and murdered by rival factions, and Vlad himself was imprisoned by the Ottomans, an experience that left him deeply scarred and thirsty for revenge. When Vlad ascended to the throne of Wallachia in 1456, he sought to restore his family's power and exact revenge on those who had wronged him. His reign became infamous for its brutal methods, most notably his use of impalement as a form of execution. Victims were impaled on long wooden stakes, a method that was not only torturous, but also served as a grotesque public spectacle. The bodies of the impaled would often be displayed in public places to intimidate his enemies and send a clear message about the consequences of defying his rule. Vlad's impaling of his enemies is legendary, with reports of thousands of people being executed in this gruesome manner. The accounts of these atrocities often describe entire forests of impaled bodies, some of which were left to rot in the open air as a form of psychological warfare. The sheer horror of these displays was meant to instill fear in both his enemies and his subjects. Vlad's enemies, especially the Ottoman forces, feared him so much that they were reluctant to engage him in battle, knowing that such a confrontation would come at a terrible cost. Yet among the many terrifying stories of Vlad's reign, the accounts of him forcing his enemies to eat human flesh stand out as particularly gruesome and macabre. According to some sources, Vlad would invite captured enemies, rival nobles, and even traitorous boyars to a grand feast, only to have them seated at his table where they would be forced to partake in a meal that included the remains of their fellow men. This ritual of forced cannibalism served not only as a method of psychological torture, but also as a grotesque display of power, ensuring that his guests knew exactly what fate awaited those who dared to oppose him. The claim that Vlad served human flesh at his feasts is primarily rooted in the writings of his enemies, particularly those from Hungary and Germany. These accounts were spread far and wide through the emerging European press, contributing to the growing myth of Vlad the Impaler as a bloodthirsty tyrant. However, despite the lack of concrete evidence to support the cannibalism claims, there is no denying that Vlad's reputation for cruelty was well earned. The fear that he instilled in his enemies was not only due to his impaling of thousands, but also because of the psychological terror he used to control his subjects. It is believed that Vlad's cruelty was not just a matter of personal preference, but also a calculated political strategy. He understood that fear was a powerful tool in maintaining control over his kingdom. His brutal methods were designed to eliminate any opposition, whether external or internal. His use of impalement, while shocking, was not entirely unique in medieval warfare, but the sheer scale of his executions set him apart from other rulers. Vlad's reputation for cruelty became so widespread that even the mighty Ottoman Empire, which was a dominant force in Eastern Europe at the time, hesitated to engage him in battle. The psychological impact of Vlad's reign was far-reaching. The stories of his atrocities spread throughout Europe, and his name became synonymous with bloodshed. Over time, these stories were embellished and distorted, turning Vlad into a figure of myth and legend. The image of him as a vampire lord, popularized by Bram Stoker's Dracula, was a product of these exaggerated tales, but the reality of his reign was perhaps even more terrifying than any fictional account. Some historians argue that many of the most horrifying stories about Vlad, including the claims of cannibalism, were the result of propaganda spread by his enemies. These accounts were used to demonize him and justify their own actions against him. However, others contend that Vlad's cruelty was so extreme that it is entirely possible he engaged in such acts, even if the specific claims of cannibalism are not verifiable. Regardless of the truth behind the cannibalism stories, there is little doubt that Vlad the Impaler was one of the most ruthless rulers in history. His reign was marked by violence, fear, and an unyielding determination to secure his power. His actions left an indelible mark on history, and the image of the impaled bodies that he left in his wake continues to haunt the collective memory of Europe. Vlad's legacy, though marred by his cruelty, also contributed to the formation of the vampire mythos that has become a lasting part of popular culture. In the end, Vlad the Impaler's legacy is one of terror and ruthlessness. Whether or not he actually forced his enemies to eat human flesh at his feasts is still a matter of debate. But there is no question that his reign was one of the most brutal in history. His name, synonymous with cruelty, continues to evoke fear and fascination, making him one of history's most notorious rulers.